In Terracotta Army, the Emperor has died, and you've been tasked with creating warrior statues to protect him in the afterlife. Thank you for joining us at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Terracotta Army is a worker placement area majority game for 1 to 4 players. Takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to play.
It's published by Board and Dice. They sent us this copy to review. We'll give a quick overview of the gameplay and then share our experiences and opinions.
Terracotta Army has a main game board with spinning discs in the action wheel area, several types of cardboard tokens, plastic figures for the 4 types of warriors and the specialists, and then each player has wooden workers and markers and a set of plastic bases for the warriors.
In Terracotta Army, you're playing as a talented craftsman creating clay statues in the mausoleum. The game is played over 5 rounds. Each round is divided into the action phase, where players place their workers on the board, the scoring phase, and then the cleanup phase. At the end of the game, there is additional scoring.
On your turn, you place a worker on an empty space around the wheel to select your line of actions. Then you take the action of the innermost ring, then the middle action, and then the action of the outermost ring.
You'll be doing things like gaining coins, gaining wet clay, spending wet clay to build warrior statues, making your dry clay wet, activating masters, readying your weapons, and moving up in turn order.
Here's a quick look at some of the main actions. When you spend wet clay to build a statue, you choose one of the available statues in the box, attach your color base to it, and place it in the mausoleum.
You'll get immediate points based on which one you pick, and if your matching weapon is ready, you may activate it to get more points and another benefit.
Many of the outer ring actions allow you to purchase special statues like horses, archers, musicians, and footmen. They all do unique things in the mausoleum that hopefully will get you more points.
The master actions allow you to influence and activate a specific master. You only have to pay for a master once, and then you'll have an ongoing benefit whenever you take that specific action. During the cleanup phase, you'll also get a benefit.
When you place a worker, you might not be able to take all 3 actions. That's okay. You'll hopefully be able to get more efficient as the game progresses. If you can't or don't want to take the action on the inner or middle ring, you can instead take a coin or a wet clay. You don't get that kind of benefit if you don't take the action of the outer ring.
Yeah, kind of stinks. After everyone has placed all their workers, you'll move to the scoring phase.
During the scoring phase, you'll look at 3 main things: the scoring inspectors, the musicians, and the scoring tiles.
Each scoring inspector will look at their row or column and see who has the most statues present. That person has domination and scores 7 points. But if you have at least 1, you'll score 3 points for presence.
The musicians are looking at all the warrior statues in their rows and columns, and players get 1 point for each of their statues.
You'll also score the tile for that round. The player with domination gets the higher points, and anyone with presence gets the lower points. The tiles are randomly placed during setup, so you'll know at the beginning of the game what scores. There is a big difference between the points in round 1 and round 5.
As part of the cleanup phase, you rotate the action wheels, turn your wet clay to its dry side, and gain benefits from your masters. Now, after 5 rounds, the game is over, and you'll do some end game scoring.
Players get points for domination and presence for their warriors surrounding the footman, and 2 points for a kneeling archer facing one of their warriors.
Players will also score points based on the groups of matching warriors and how many different players are in that group. For example, in a 4-player game, if all 4 players have crossbowmen in a connected group, then each of the crossbowmen will be worth 4 points. That can be a lot of points. But if only 3 players are present in the group, then each warrior is only worth 3 points each.
You'll also score domination and presence for each group. Whenever there's an unbroken tie for domination, everyone involved just scores presence.
You also get points for leftover clay and coins, but that's pretty much it. Whoever has the most points wins, and those points could be in the upper 100s to over 200.
Wow. So that was a very brief description of gameplay. There's obviously more things going on, and we'll touch on additional aspects as we continue with the review. But if you want to see a full tutorial, you can check out the video from our friend Paul Grogan over at the Gaming Rules channel. Now, this game ultimately feels like a souped-up worker placement game. You get multiple actions when you place your worker, so there's a lot you can do. But sometimes the spots you want aren't available, or the actions don't line up well.
I totally agree, but this can be mitigated. Throughout the game, one of the actions lets you replace a small worker with a larger one that can go where someone has a small meeple. Now, that's definitely more helpful in a higher player count game. The other thing you can do is turn the discs.
Before you place a worker, you can spend coins to rotate one of the discs one space. This can be really useful to line up actions exactly as you want them, or to even mess up an action line that really benefits another player.
But it doesn't always work out since each disc is required to rotate a certain direction. I've had it where the action I want is one space away, but the disc can't rotate that way.
One of the things I do like about Terracotta Army is that there are several ways to get points. It doesn't all come down to the area majority at the end of the game. You can decide to go for immediate points, end of round points, or end of game points.
Yeah.
And often those points actually work together.
Hopefully.
If several players are fighting after one type of scoring, I can try to do something different.
But I think the key is to focus on building lots of warriors. How you do that and which ones to build is really up to you.
I think that is where the theme really comes through.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, this whole game is based on the historical Terracotta Army built for the first emperor of China, and players are building these clay statues in the mausoleum on the board. It looks really cool by the end of the game with all the different warriors and specialists on the game board.
Overall, the components work well. The plastic statues are pretty distinct from each other with the different sculpts. I think the two that some players confuse with each other are the guards and soldiers. They both have staffs that they hold. From a quality standpoint, some of those staffs have a little bend in them. The footmen, kneeling archers, and musicians are also a bit similar, but the differently shaped bases do help.
We haven't really had any issues with players being confused once there are a lot of figures on the board, but I have heard that as a complaint from others. Maybe it doesn't affect me as much because I'm short, and so I'm used to standing up often to see the game boards.
I know, a lot of times we're playing and we're standing at the end of the game anyway, so.
We did have one quality control issue with our game. The insert for the warrior box was flipped, so the info on the ends didn't line up. Kevin took it out and replaced it so it would match correctly. I really do like the info on the box. It's a really helpful reminder while you're playing.
Now, we haven't heard anyone else complain of the box mistake, so it really could have just been a fluke for our game. Now, overall, I really, really do like the aesthetic of the game. But I think it's time for replayability and variability.
Well, variability comes in a number of ways. The action wheels mean that from round to round and game to game, the action combos are going to be different. And there's also a good number of end of round goal tiles. Their combination and order will affect player strategy. Because of the tactical nature of the decisions, having to reassess and modify your plans based on the current options, I think there's a good amount of replayability. What worked in one game might not work in another.
I agree. Let's move to player interaction. Now, you can take spots on the action wheel, but I think most of the interaction is on the mausoleum board. Not only where the warriors are being placed, but what groups are being formed. Also, there's those inspectors.
Yes.
Certain actions allow players to move them, which affect which lines will score. I got a lot of points with a sneaky inspector move near the end of one of the rounds we played.
Yes, he did. So there's lots of jockeying for position in the mausoleum. The area majorities, the dominance and presence, are a big part of the player interaction. I enjoyed this aspect more in the higher player count games than at 2 players. I just thought at 2 players the area majority wasn't as interesting.
But at 2 players you get 5 workers. You get fewer workers in a higher player count game.
That was a big adjustment. The first game we played was at 2 players, and then we played one at 4, and I had all these big plans for all the things I was going to do. And then I realized I didn't have enough actions. I only had 3 instead of 5. Also, with 4 players, the wheel got full really quickly. So having the large workers or taking the turn order action was a must. Otherwise, otherwise you could get stuck with a practically useless turn.
A lot of actions require you to have coins or specific readied weapons. And of course, you usually need wet clay to build warriors. So you often need to take actions in a specific order. Get wet clay or re-wet your clay and ready weapons on turn 1. Then build warriors and specialists on turn 2. It can be beneficial if you can get off sequence so you're not competing with the other players for the same actions.
Very true. Overall, I would say this game's complexity falls in the medium to medium plus range. The worker placement aspect has some extra analysis because of the action rings, but it's not too difficult.
Oh.
It can cause some longer turns as players think through their options, though. A lot of the complexity, I think, comes in with the scoring, understanding it and capitalizing on it. A single warrior placement could score multiple times in ways during the game. So it might take a full play for everything scoring-wise to click.
Now, final thoughts for me. I think the big pluses are the table presence and the terracotta statues. I like the action wheel too. I really like how that all works together. I also like games with area majority, so I think this is a really good game for me.
So area majority usually isn't my thing. It's often too combative and has too much direct conflict for me. But this game feels different.
Okay.
I think it's more like a puzzle. Sometimes getting presence in several areas is just as good as getting dominance in one area.
Sure.
So you can kind of be sneaky with your points and pick and choose what you want to focus on. And I like games where you have to adapt and try new things. Which masters will be most useful? Which warriors or specialists should I build? Should I go for endgame points or immediate points? Can I do both?
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed my plays of Terracotta Army, and I'm looking forward to playing it some more.
I think you'll like Terracotta Army if you like medium weight worker placement type games like Zulkin or Red Cathedral.
Oh yeah, those are some interesting comparisons.
Yeah.
So thanks again to Board and Dice for providing this review copy, and thank you for watching. So, are you interested in Terracotta Army? Is there anything else you want to know about the game? Let us know in the comments.